If this game is anything like last year's, we're going to be in for something very special. We've got number 9 Ole Miss taking on number 13 LSU at night in Death Valley in a massive SEC showdown that truly feels like a college football playoff elimination game, as the loser of this game will take their second loss of the year with a very difficult conference slate left to go. So who is going to win Saturday night down in Baton Rouge? That's what we're here to talk about today. Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert. We're so glad that you could join us today. As always, please continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and of course, check out everything down in the description below. That includes our expert picks, some of the best college football and NFL spread picks in the entire country, beating out over 80% of the national handicappers each of the last 6 years, and currently doing so this year as well. So if you want some of the best picks in the country for one of the lowest prices in the country for a full year-long subscription, full 365 days, that's something that no other handicapper's given you. We can promise you that. This is the place for you. Go take advantage of it. Sign up today. Become a member of our GE Nation. So Ole Miss, LSU, top 15 showdown. Great Week 7 slate ahead of us. This is obviously one of the top games of the week. A great rivalry matchup, too, between the Rebels and the Tigers. One that LSU typically does fare very well in and does fairly well at home as well. Ole Miss has not defeated LSU in Death Valley since 2008. They have not won in Death Valley since 2008. You look at the history, last couple of years, Ole Miss did win last year 55-49. That's what we said we were going to be in for a treat if we got a repeat, because last year's game was an absolute thriller coming down to the final seconds. LSU won this game back in Death Valley in 2022, winning 45-20 in what feels like a similar situation, a game where, they were slight underdogs. Ole Miss was a top 10 team, got off to a very fast start to the season, but people weren't really buying in on the Rebels just yet, and LSU kind of showed why they shouldn't, and they beat them by 25 points. Will that happen again, though, on Saturday? When we take a look at the offense, and we'll start with Ole Miss. They have one of the best offenses in the country. They're number 2 nationally, averaging 576.8 yards per game, including over 370 passing yards per game from Jackson Dart, who has already thrown for over 2,100 yards, 13 touchdowns, and just 2 interceptions. This Ole Miss team obviously took a shocking loss a few weeks ago at home to Kentucky, but they bounced back in a big way, going on the road to South Carolina, not an easy place to play, and beating the Gamecocks 27-3 with 425 yards of offense. Henry Parrish looks great at running back, rushing for over 500 yards so far this year and 9 touchdowns. 5 players have at least 100 reception yards, but there is no bigger player on Ole Miss's offense, besides Jackson Dart, of course, than their receiver Trey Harris, who has over 885 reception yards this year on just 52 receptions. So 885 reception yards on just 52 receptions. The problem is he's questionable. At the time of this filming, we're not 100% sure if Harris is going to play in Baton Rouge or not. The problem is the next leading receiver after Harris is Antoine Juice Wells, who has 371 yards. So there is a 514-yard difference between the number 1 receiver for Ole Miss and the second leading receiver for Ole Miss. For me, that's concerning. If Harris isn't good to go, or if he's not 100% and can't make those explosive plays that we've seen him do all year long, this Ole Miss offense is going to look drastically different and is going to take a major hit. So continue to monitor his status, really, the remainder of today and into Saturday morning. But again, as of right now, we are not entirely sure if he's going to play. On LSU, their offense. First off, LSU's coming off a bye week. So they're getting this game at home at Death Valley at night, well rested. That's huge for the Tigers, right? They've got a solid offense. They're 16th nationally, averaging over 468 yards per game. They're 7th nationally in the pass, averaging 337 passing yards per game. Garrett Nussmeier has been phenomenal this year, over 1,600 yards, 15 touchdowns to just 4 interceptions. They've got 6 players that have at least 100 reception yards. They do a great job of spreading out the ball. Same with Ole Miss. Great way of sharing the ball. The Tigers' run game, though, has left a lot to be desired. LSU has not been great on the ground. They're averaging just 131.2 rushing yards per game. So, obviously, from a balance standpoint, Ole Miss owns that edge. From a balance standpoint, Ole Miss can beat you through the air. They can beat you on the ground. LSU is a team that more than likely is going to have to beat you solely through the air because the ground game really hasn't taken off and probably isn't going to take off against this Ole Miss front seven. But I will give LSU and Brian Kelly credit here. Since that week 1 loss to USC out in Vegas, they were held to 20 points in that loss to the Trojans. They've scored at least 34 points in every game since. The key for LSU, though, in this game is getting off to a fast start. If you've watched LSU football over these last few weeks, you've noticed they don't start very strong. They really don't. They've played 5 games, and in those 5 games, they've only outscored their opponents by 13 points in the first quarter. 37-24 in the first quarter. It was 0-0 in week 1 against USC. Then it was only 9-7 in week 2 in favor of the Tigers. They trailed 7-0 in week 3. They trailed 7-10 the week after that, and then 21-0 in favor of the Tigers in their last game against South Alabama. So their first quarter performances really haven't been all that great, and that's concerning. They've been held scoreless twice in the first quarter to USC and South Carolina. They trailed 10-7 against UCLA there. So they've got to find a way to get something going against an Ole Miss team that we know is explosive on offense, we know can light it up very quickly, and Ole Miss defense that is severely underrated. People do not talk nearly enough about the power of the Rebels defense, one that ranks 12th nationally, giving up just 267.5 yards per game, one that ranks first, number 1, in stopping the run, allowing just 63.7 rushing yards per game. And again, I know Ole Miss's schedule hasn't been all that great. They've played a lot of cupcake opponents. Their best, toughest games have been Wake Forest, Kentucky, and South Carolina. They beat Wake Forest and South Carolina in dominating fashion on the road. They lost at home to Kentucky, and even the Wildcats aren't that great of a team. They're not some world beater right now. So Ole Miss hasn't really played anybody this good as LSU, so the run game numbers could be a little skewed. But still, it shows how powerful their front seven is. It shows how powerful their front seven is when Ole Miss has 24 sacks already this season. They have 24 sacks and have forced 9 turnovers. So they are no stranger in creating turnovers, no stranger in creating havoc. This is a dangerous, dangerous Ole Miss team. And if you look at the keys here, I don't have faith in the LSU run game because they haven't been able to get anything going in the 5 games they've played prior to this. I don't think they're going to get much going on the ground against an Ole Miss defense that ranks first against the run. So for Ole Miss, hone in on that secondary. Allow that secondary to do their job. Get after Garrett Nussmeier, force a turnover or 2. We know the offense will convert. You've got the game. That's what you got to do. Just stop the pass because I don't have faith in the LSU run game. LSU, their defense was really, really, really bad last year. This year, seems to have improved a little bit. They're giving up 353 yards per game, 236 of those coming through the air. They have 15 sacks on the year. They have forced 6 turnovers on the year. So they're doing a decent job. Not nearly as good as that of Ole Miss statistically, but a decent job. And you can also argue that LSU has played better teams, right? They played USC. They did beat South Carolina on the road, although it was much closer than what we saw from Ole Miss beating South Carolina on the road. They faced, even though it was South Alabama, a good offensive South Alabama team and crushed them. So LSU has played UCLA, another power opponent, even though they're not all that great. So they've played tougher teams than Ole Miss has really played so far this year. The numbers could be skewed a little bit for that. But here's the thing. Ultimately, when it comes to LSU's defense, you've got to find a way to take away an aspect of the Rebels offense, right? We know how balanced they are. So you're going to stop the run and hope that your secondary can do their job against Jackson Dart in this passing attack, or do you try to sell out on the pass and say, hey, beat us on the ground and hope you can get enough stops that way? That's your question for LSU. Obviously, I'd much rather Ole Miss try to beat me on the ground than through the air because Jackson Dart and that passing attack are absolutely ridiculous. But here's what this comes down to for me. Our final pick for what happens on Saturday night in Death Valley. One of the most difficult places to play in the country. One of the greatest atmospheres in all of college football. For some reason, it's 10 times better at night in Death Valley than it is at 2:30 in the afternoon. It's the beauty of college football, beauty of Baton Rouge. If Trey Harris plays this game, for Ole Miss, the Rebels will win. If he does not, the Rebels will lose. Now, I know it sounds crazy that we're putting that much stock into a wide receiver. I get it with quarterbacks, right? We talk about that all the time with Utah and Cam Rising. If Cam Rising plays, I like him. If he doesn't play, I don't like him, right? Quarterback is typically greater than wide receiver. But that's how big of a difference maker Trey Harris is in this game. Again, 514-yard difference between him and their second leading receiver. He is the go-to guy for Jackson Dart. If he doesn't play, someone's going to have to step up. And a night game in Baton Rouge really isn't the time for someone to start to step up and become a hero, right? You need your team at full strength and full focus all the way to go. Ole Miss won't have that if Trey Harris doesn't play. So if he does play, and Ole Miss truly is at the most part at full strength, I like their odds here. I haven't been thoroughly impressed with LSU's defense. They've been okay, but I don't think they're going to be able to stop them. Trey Harris doesn't play. Give me the Tigers. They absolutely can put points on the board here. Again, arguably the best offense that Ole Miss has faced all year long. Certainly the best quarterback that Ole Miss has faced all year long. Garrett Nussmeier and the Tigers will put up some points. They're not going to lay an egg in front of their home crowd, not in this environment. It's going to be a close game regardless. It's going to be a close game regardless. So I'm kind of copping out here. My gut leans more towards Ole Miss if Harris does play. So take that as our official pick. We'll go Ole Miss. But again, if we find out he is absolutely not playing, I might start swaying the other way and going with the Tigers. So guys, as always, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and of course, check out everything down in the description below. That includes our website, thegridironexpert.com, home, of course, of those exclusive expert picks. Some of the best college football and NFL spread picks in the entire country, beating out over 80% of the national handicappers each of the last 6 years. So if you want to win big with us, especially this weekend, go sign up for those picks today and become a member of our GE Nation. And once again, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.